Um, I I like learning things. This I don't know, sounds maybe a little wonky, but I was excited to learn about how our county and our city and our school districts operate. I even learned a little bit about how the 49ers run. We did a report about the 49ers in the city of Santa Clara, so you had to figure out a little bit about the 49ers. Anyway, and another interesting thing is you have a chance to actually engage and interview with a lot of local officials, and frankly, I developed a higher appreciation for some of the knowledge and expertise of some of our county supervisors after talking to them on the grand jury.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Only in Santa Clara County, a podcast dedicated to democratizing the process of civic participation in local government. This podcast is produced by the Dreaming Collaborative, a civic nonprofit working at the intersection of culture, technology, and civic life to transform the practice of democracy in local government. My name is Alina Yin, and I will be your host. Hello, and welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to our final episode, part 5 of our 5-part series on the civil grand jury in Santa Clara County, a 19-member citizen watchdog keeping local government accountable. This group is tasked with duties and powers to investigate all things local. This includes all of County Santa Clara government operations, all law enforcement agencies in Santa Clara County, in all school districts, all 15 cities and their operations within Santa Clara County, and all 26 special districts in Santa Clara County. So, if you've ever had a complaint involving any of those government agencies, these are the folks who would take that up. They would investigate and they would make sure there is accountability. Now, in our final episode, we will hear from Scott Duncan, a former grand juror as well, about his insights on why you should apply. And stay tuned for after the interview as we go over the logistics of applying as well as filing a complaint. Scott Duncan is a 30-year resident of Santa Clara County. Scott has managed 3 Silicon Valley high-tech companies and is now retired. He is a active volunteer in civic activities, including the civil grand jury. And now, onto our interview.
Hi, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Scott Duncan. Um, I have been a longtime county resident. I moved to the South Bay. I'm old enough to say I moved here before it was called Silicon Valley. I came here basically because that's where the jobs were after I got out of UC Berkeley. So I've worked in management in high-tech companies, wife, beautiful daughter who now lives in Colorado. And I retired from high tech just before COVID, and I've tried to do a little bit of civic engagement and volunteer work since then.
And so there's a lot of different civic engagement opportunities, there's boards and commissions. How did you find the civil grand jury and what made you decide to apply?
Um, so I've gone a couple of directions on civic engagement, and in fact, I'm a member of a Sunnyvale City commission and do some other volunteer work. But as far as how did I hear about the grand jury, it must be Brittany's wonderful outreach or something. It was on my mind for probably 10 years as something that I thought would be interesting when I had more time. Kind of the investigation aspect intrigued me. I've done some investigations in the private sector, worked with a lot of different groups. So it just on the surface seemed quite interesting.
Nice. Okay. And in your term, which was 18 months, because of the tail end of COVID, what were some of the things that you learned that surprised you about the process or you found really, really interesting?
Um, Kind of what was the surprise? I'm not sure, but everything was interesting. It was just a fantastic learning experience. Now, you don't do this sort of civic engagement just because it's a personal learning experience, but frankly, um, I I like learning things. This I don't know, sounds maybe a little wonky, but I was excited to learn about how our county and our city and our school districts operate. I even learned a little bit about how the 49ers run. We did a report about the 49ers in the city of Santa Clara, so you had to figure out a little bit about the 49ers. Anyway, And another interesting thing is you have a chance to actually engage and interview with a lot of local officials, and frankly, I developed a higher appreciation for some of the knowledge and expertise of some of our county supervisors after talking to them on the grand jury.
Was there how would you describe your service and, like, what was the experience like in being there for 18 months?
It you get into certain rhythms of initially just evaluating complaints that come in and deciding what you're going to investigate. And then the investigation process, you get into a rhythm of mostly interviews. So, I mean, there's just a lot of administrative work in terms of scheduling and setting up an interview and getting the questions and then trying to figure out whether you learned anything from all those interviews. That's kind of the middle of the process. And then it starts really getting frenetic when you start writing the reports and have all sorts of people try to improve upon the report, and then you send it to the editorial committee who changes everything, and then you send it to Brittany and Aaron who add a lot of value to it. So that, but that part is really compressed and high energy and frankly full of a little bit of anxieties at the time. And then you kind of, and it comes June and you're done.
So there was a part of the aspect of the job or of the community service where you are talking to a lot of different types of folks.
Absolutely. We would I think we once spoke to a U.S. congressperson, but you're speaking to heads of different departments in the county, or mayors, or council members, or school district presidents, all sorts of people in leadership positions in our local government.
Oh, very cool. In your perspective and your experience, why is this work and community service important?
That one, to me, is an easy one. I truly believe in a citizens watchdog type function. I mean, the resources and time are limited, but it does provide, I think, an important oversight function over our leaders. And I also believe it's sort of today increasingly important because there's been a real big decline, no secret, in the investigative reporting of some of our local newspapers. So there aren't a whole lot of other organizations that are really trying to dig in deep and spend a year looking into different organizations in our local government other than the civil grand jury. I think it's no secret over the past couple of years, the Santa Clara civil grand jury has, really um, been an important part of governance, and there's been a few big headline cases that have come out of the civil grand jury. My view is that, well, you don't join the civil grand jury so you can see your report in the headlines. But if it does get into headlines, then you can feel pretty confident that you're holding some of our leaders to account.
And why do you think others should join?
Well, it's hard to describe, but it really is a wonderful and exhilarating experience. Um, I found myself getting passionate about issues that I, frankly, a year before didn't know anything about school board governance or things like that. And you start feeling like you're really going to make a difference. I guess I would contrast that. I'm proud that I'm a member of a Sunnyvale City Commission where we are review and advisory versus the civil grand jury where you're digging in and you're the ones doing the work. And along the way, um, it's like working with any big group. There's some personalities that don't get along too well, but generally you meet some really interesting people. And I'm happy to say I'm a member of a civil grand jury book club, and occasionally socially and still interact with some members that you worked 18 months together, you can't help but form a few new social bonds.
Yeah, that's because there's 19 members, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's a good intensive work environment because you are spending at least 20 hours a week together.
At least, and Brittany hates it when I say that, but oftentimes it's more than that. I mean, it depends on your level of passion and involvement and ability to become engaged. But if you ask me about what to tell people that might be on the grand jury, expect a commitment, and not a drudgery commitment. Expect to be engaged and want to commit your time to doing the investigations right.
What is one advice or pro tip you'd give to like a future jurist on what to expect and how to set themselves up for success in service? Maybe a book from your book club? I don't know.
Oh, we we went through the civil grand jury manual in the very first month. So there's a lot of sort of law and advice to get you started. But you don't know what sort of organization you're going to be investigating, so I'm not sure there's any single one thing. And you quickly learn along the way the basics of the government. But I would just, if someone is thinking of it, I'd say do it. You won't regret it. Again, as long as you're committed, don't do it halfway. Commit to a great year of service, and I don't think y- anyone would regret doing that. So go ahead and apply.
Alrighty, who is ready to apply? Okay, first off, if you are listening from afar, FYI, all 58 counties in California by state mandate have a civil grand jury. So you can look up yours. They should work pretty similarly and have a application schedule that's similar to the one in Santa Clara County. If you're listening from outside of California, I would check with your county superior court system and see how a body like this might be set up in your state. And back to Santa Clara County now. At the time of this recording, the Superior Court of California in County of Santa Clara is recruiting qualified applicants for the 2026 and 2027 Santa Clara County Civil Grand Jury. Applications are due March 27th, 2026 by 5 p.m. for the 1 year term commencing July 1st, 2026. Typically, their recruitment and application period is during the winter, with applications usually due in March. So, if you are inspired and able to check out, our show notes for resources, the application links in there are there, and more. And to learn more, you can visit santaclara.courts.ca.gov/C as in cat, G as in grand, and J as in jury. So CGJ. And that is also in our show notes. Or you can give them a call, and their number is 408-882-2721. Again, that's 408-882-2721. And you can also send them an email, and you can find the email in our show notes. I really encourage you to email or call the Civil Grand Jury Department. They are super friendly and they are there to answer any questions that you may have. Now, for the rest of us who may not have time to volunteer at this moment, but maybe, we have a complaint. So let's run down some of the things within the jurisdiction of the Civil Grand Jury. First, all complaints are confidential, and there are several ways to submit the required complaint form. You can receive a confirmation that your complaint has been received, so like a little email receipt. Um, you can check the show notes. There's a link on where to file a complaint. You can mail it, you can email it, and all that information is in our show notes. And one note is that once you receive your confirmation, you probably won't receive any other further communications. It is up to the civil grand jury to choose, meaning, they get a lot of complaints year round and they vote and decide together which ones they will investigate. So beyond your confirmation receipt, you're probably not going to hear from them again. They may contact you if it's relevant, but that's optional and again under their discretion. Due to the highly confidential nature of their work, their findings are published in their reports. So that is the most communication you would hear from them is what is written in the reports. And you can definitely call them and sign up to receive notifications for when the reports are released. They are very, very interesting, so well written. I highly recommend checking them out to learn more. And again, you can visit the website or give them a call or email them, and all that information is in our show notes. Okay, on to filing a complaint. So, all County of Santa Clara government operations. This is all of the entities that you're able to file a complaint with. So, Santa Clara County government operations. What does that mean? Literally every department, including the Board of Supervisors. For example, maybe your complaint has to do with the Santa Clara County Weights and Measures Division. That department checks the accuracy of store scales, price scanning devices, gas pumps, and other consumer commodities so that you can shop with confidence. So, say you're at the grocery store or a gas pump and the numbers are not adding up. You've already contacted the Weights and Measures Division to no avail. Well, that is something that you would be able to file a complaint about. The work of the county is vast. Like, did you even know there was a Weights and Measures Division? And I'm not at all saying that they aren't doing their jobs. This is just really an obscure example to point out the depth of the civil grand jury and where they can go. Here is another example of a past report. So this is in 2024, 2025, the Santa Clara County Civil Grand Jury report sought to understand the process involved in obtaining representation from a public defender and the circumstances under which the public defender's office would seek assistance from a private law firm. And from that investigation, the civil grand jury found the existence of a pro bono program that supports the public defender's office commitment to providing robust defense to all defendants. So maybe there was a complaint questioning whether this office was doing their job. And as we heard in episode 17 with Judge Emity, sometimes the civil grand jury finds that yes, they actually are doing their job and doing it well. Okay, so what other complaints can the civil grand jury investigate? All law enforcement agencies in Santa Clara County, that is the sheriff, police departments, every city that has a police department, and if they exist in Santa Clara County. They can also investigate all school districts, and they can also investigate all 15 cities in Santa Clara County. So the entire government operations and all the departments of the city of San Jose, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, etc. All cities in Santa Clara County. For example, also from a recent report a few years ago, there was an investigation into the relationship between the city of Santa Clara and the 49ers. And how do the 49ers fit in, you may ask? Scott Duncan also mentioned this earlier in his interview. Well, they are at the Levi Stadium, and that is in Santa Clara County. It's in the city of Santa Clara. They have to, pay certain fees, taxes, obtain permits, etc. They deal with the city, and all those dealings are subject to the civil grand jury investigation should a complaint be filed. So, if a private corporation has a contract, is doing business with a school district, the county, in the cities, etc., and say a resident submitted a complaint questioning the legality, the process of the contract, the work, you can submit a complaint for the civil grand jury to investigate that. Lastly, the civil grand jury can investigate all 26 special districts in Santa Clara County. That's like your fire districts, your water districts, etc. And that's all of it. That it's a lot. And it's incredibly powerful. This is an incredibly powerful part of our democracy. They are fully supported by the Superior Court of California in Santa Clara County, our judicial branch. They receive robust education. They have subpoena powers. Their work does impact and create change. And I really hope that this series has done them justice, that you feel more empowered to participate in this lesser known facet of our democracy, and that you consider applying. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave us a comment, or you can visit again santaclara.courts.ca.gov/c as in cat, g as in George, j as in jury, or you can call them, call the courts, specifically the Civil Grand Jury Court Department, which is 408 882 2721. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share, give us a comment, give us a like, give us a follow. It really does make a big difference. And if you know somebody in your life who's looking for community service, public service, to be more involved, this is a really great opportunity. And do please share it with them. Alrighty, folks, until next time.